Santham Academy. Welcome to Digital Kaksha. To get updates on new videos, click the subscribe button and the bell icon.
Now we will study about pollination. Pollination is very essential process for the fertilization to take place. So, what is pollination? Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma in the same flower or between two different flowers of the same variety. Then we call it as pollination. So, the transfer of pollen grains from anther, where the anther is in the flower, that is the male reproductive part which bears pollen grain. So, from anther to stigma. Stigma is the female part, tip of the pistil. Stigma, style, ovary and ovule. Together they form pistil. So, transfer of pollen grains from anther, male part, to stigma, that is female part, is known as pollination. Pollination can be of two types: self-pollination and cross-pollination. What is self-pollination? When this transfer of pollen grains is taking place within the same flower or between two flowers of the same plant, then we call it as self-pollination. As you can see here, the transfer from anther to stigma within the same flower, that is the bisexual flower, having the male and the female gametes both. So, within the same flower, if this transfer is taking place, then we call it as self-pollination, or between two flowers on the same plant, then also we call it as self-pollination. Second is cross-pollination. So, as you can see in the diagram, the transfer of pollen grains between two different plants, between two flowers on two different plants, then we call it as cross-pollination. So, there are two types of pollination: self-pollination and cross-pollination. A difference can be asked between the two in the exams. Now, how this transfer takes place? So, there are agents of pollination which helps in transferring pollen grains from anther to stigma. So, these agents are wind, that is air, water, insects, birds, animals and human beings. Yes, we also help in pollination. So, when you go and touch the flowers, the tiny dust-like pollen stick on our hand, and then we go and touch another flower, and then we transfer pollen grains from one flower to another flower. So, we human beings are also helping in pollination. So, these are the agents of pollination which helps to transfer pollen present in anther to stigma, that is part of the female reproductive system, that is the pistil. So, air, if transfer takes place by air, then we call it as anemophilia. Second, water. Especially in the aquatic plants, water helps in pollination like lotus, etc. So, if water helps in pollination, we call it as hydrophily. Next are the insects. Honeybees, butterflies, you must have seen sitting on flowers. When they sit on flowers, the pollen stick on their wings, legs, etc. and they get transferred. So, if insects helps in pollination, then we call it as entomophily. And birds if they help in pollination, then we call it as ornithophily. So these are the various agents which help in pollination, transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma. This is very essential process because this leads to the formation of the seed. Now we will start with the process of fertilization in plants. How does fertilization takes place and what is the meaning of fertilization? Fertilization means fusion of male and female gamete. In plants, male gamete is the pollen and female gamete is the ovule. So fusion of male and female gamete, that is fusion of pollen and ovule, is known as fertilization. This process involves few steps. Step number 1, pollination. Step number 2, development of pollen tube. Step number 3, fusion of male and female gamete. So these are the steps involved in the process of fertilization in plants. As you can see in the diagram, this is the diagram of fertilization in plants. This is very important diagram from exam point of view. Labeling can be asked in the exam. Now, step 4 is pollination. As you have already studied, pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma. And this is essential because of fertilization to take place. So, once the pollen is transferred from anther to stigma, it will fall on the stigma. Stigma, that is the tip of the female reproductive part, that is pistil. And stigma is sticky in nature. So, when pollen falls on stigma, stigma holds the pollen and it will lie there as long as the conditions become favorable. When enough moisture, air and warmth is available, at that time germination of pollen will take place and pollen will develop pollen tube. So, after germination of pollen, the pollen will start developing a pollen tube under favorable conditions. This is step number 2, development of pollen tube. When the development of pollen tube starts, at that time pollen nucleus will split into 2 nuclei. And these nuclei, along with the pollen tube, they will move forward towards the ovule, that is the site of fertilization. So, within the pollen tube, 2 daughter within the pollen tube, male nuclei will move forward. They will remain at the tip of the pollen tube. So, as pollen tube moves forward, the male nuclei will also move forward and then they will reach ovule. In the ovule, there is a small opening called micropyle, and through this opening micropyle, the pollen tube enters inside the ovule. When it enters inside the ovule, pollen tube will rupture and both nuclei will be released inside the ovule. As you can see in the diagram, ovule also has 2 nuclei at different places. One is the polar nuclei and one is the germinal nuclei present in the center of the ovule. So, when the pollen tube will enter and it will burst open, it will release both male nuclei inside the ovule and then fusion of male nuclei and female nuclei will take place and that means fertilization will take place. At the time of fertilization, one male nuclei will fuse with the polar nuclei of the egg, and other male nuclei will fuse with the central nuclei of the egg. In this way, 2 times fertilization takes place in flower, that is in the flowering plants, and this is called double fertilization. So in flowering plants, we see double fertilization taking place. Once the fertilization is done, or once the fertilization takes place, after that there is no use of the other parts of the flower, that is stigma, style, sepals, petals, etc. So once the fertilization is over and zygote formation takes place, then the remaining parts of the flower will start drying up and they will fall off. So only the ovary will be left on the pedicel attached to the branch. Remaining all parts of the flower, that is petals, sepals, stigma, style, etc. all will dry and fall off because their purpose is over. Fertilization has taken place. So now there is no use of all these parts. So these all parts dry up and they fall off. As a result of fertilization, that is fusion of male and female gamete, zygote will be formed. Zygote is a unicellular structure which is formed by fusion of male and female nuclei. As we have seen, the male nuclei enters inside the female nuclei and fusion takes place inside the ovule. So the site of fertilization in plants is ovule. Now after fertilization, the fertilized ovule will develop into zygote. Zygote, which is a unicellular structure. In the zygote, repeated cell division will take place and zygote will further develop into embryo. After some time, when all the remaining parts of the flower dry up and they fall off and only ovary is left with the fertilized ovule, then this ovary will start swelling up and it will develop into fruit. So ovary develops into fruit and the fertilized ovule will develop into embryo and then it will develop into seed. So which part of the flower develops into fruit? It is ovary. And which part of the flower develops into seed? That is ovule. You must have seen the seeds of papaya, watermelon, mango, etc. So in all these, the seeds are present inside the fruit because ovule is present inside the ovary. So each seed has a growing embryo inside it. When the conditions are favorable, that is enough moisture is available, warmth is available and air is also there, then the seed will develop into seedling. This process by which seed develops into seedling is called germination. Germination of seed. The seed will develop into a tiny plant called seedling. The conditions necessary for germination are air, water and warmth. Now, this is the structure of the seed. Seed has the outer covering called seed coat, which is a protective covering. Inside that is the cotyledon, that is the edible part which we eat. So, cotyledon. On basis of cotyledon, seeds can be monocot or dicot. Monocot seeds, that is, they contain single cotyledon. Examples, all the cereals like maize, jowar, bajra, wheat, rice, etc. All these are the cereal crops and all these contain single cotyledon seed. Second, seeds can be dicot. It means they have double cotyledon or they have two cotyledons. Example, pulses, gram, etc. In all these seeds, the seeds can be easily split into two equal halves. So these are two cotyledon. So on basis of cotyledon, seeds can be dicot or monocot. Now, after that, as I have told you, there is a growing embryo inside the seed. So, this embryo will germinate into new plant. So, when we soak seeds in water, after some time, we see a tiny growth developing. That is the root which starts developing from the seed. After few days, you will see another outgrowth starts growing in upward direction. That is, the tiny shoot starts developing. So from where does these develop? From where the root develops and from where this stem develops. So there are two leaf-like structures inside the seed. Upper leaf-like structure is plumule, which will develop into stem, and the lower leaf-like structure is the radicle, which will develop into root. So when we see the seeds germinating and you see the outgrowth coming out which grows downward, these are the roots developing from radicle. And after few days you see another outgrowth, that is the stem developing. So that is the plumule developing into stem. So in this way a seed develops into a seedling. So this diagram again is very important and all the labelings are also very important. With this, the process of sexual reproduction in plants, that is flower, is completed, and after fertilization, germination takes place and a new plant develops or grows. So in this way, life continues by sexual mode of reproduction in plants. The diagrams given in the book, fertilization diagram and the structure of seed diagram, is very important from exam point of view. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, make sure to like, share and subscribe for more.